All right, let's get going. I do want to stress that for those of you who have not been to one of these sessions before, they do tend to roam around and wander the Exchange landscape in an attempt to find interesting things that you might not know or cool things that you can do and other things. So if you don't immediately see something that speaks to you, just be patient because there are literally 100 slides in this deck that we're going to go through. And the deck will be made available for download, and in the notes section of the slides is even more information for you as well, including a lot of hyperlinks that you're going to want to check out for additional content. So as we start off, we're going to talk basically about Exchange, and this is primarily for those of you who are not yet on Exchange 2016. For those of you who are on 2010, 2013, 2007, it's really time to move forward now. And I don't mean you have to come to the cloud, but you really, if you're going to stay on premises, you really need to upgrade and start moving forward. You're missing a lot of benefits and a lot of advantages over the new platform and the new architecture that we have. Now, there's two ways that you can look at architecture. One is what I'm showing you on the screen, which is how the product itself is architected. But the other thing is you also want to know how to architect your deployment as well. So I'm going to give a push off on all that content to the epic Exchange Preferred Architecture debate that's happening on Wednesday. And as we go through and we talk about certain things, if there's related information coming up later this week, I'm going to point it out to you to make sure you get there and get that information. One of the biggest changes that we made in 2016 was this reduction of server roles. We now just have the tool. Internally, we've got the mailbox role. Externally, in the perimeter network, we've got the edge transport server. That's a big fundamental change. So for those of you on 2010, for example, as you move forward and upgrade, which you're going to want to do so soon because mainstream support is over in just a couple years. Extended support is over in just a couple years. Mainstream support for 2010 ended a couple years ago. So you really do want to get up to the new architecture. That not only includes a reduction in server roles and a consolidation of functions within a single mailbox role, but it also has streamlined the communications between servers such that we have set the stage for future releases of Exchange as well. And we might have a little something to say about that later on today as well. But it's important to understand first how we develop Exchange. We don't use the old method that we did, say for instance when we were developing 2000, 2003, 2007, and so forth, where we had the 3-year periodic cycle of developing features, putting them into the product, shipping them in the product, and then maybe 4 years after we started the development on a feature, we finally got some feedback on it. We don't do that anymore. Now, we build continuously for the cloud, and we take those features and that functionality that we think could work on premises and be beneficial on premises, and we accrue them into the on-premises product, usually through the introduction of cumulative updates, but it can also be through the initial release of a product as well. So keep that in mind. We are largely delivering for the cloud first, but where possible, where we can, we put that goodness into the on-premises product. Now, there's going to be some features that will simply never make its way into on-premises, and those are features where we need the computing power in the cloud in order to achieve things. But for a lot of the typical scenarios that you're going to be using Exchange for, particularly on-premises, all that good stuff will come into Exchange. So let's talk about the life cycle. Exchange 2016 is well into its life cycle. It's been going for some time now. We RTM'd almost 2 years ago to the day. And then since then, we've been iterating, releasing cumulative updates, adding more functionality, fixing bugs, bringing the code more current, and so forth. And in fact, just last week, we released the latest update, which is cumulative update 7. And so for those of you who are running that, you'll want to go and grab that update. We'll talk about a couple issues in that update, though, coming up. There is one URL you can go to, the URL that you see on the screen. This will give you build information for all the versions of Exchange that we've released from 2007 all the way up to 2016. So if you're wondering what cumulative update you're on and all you have is the build number, you can go right to this page and find out that information. Now, as I said, CU7 is the most recent CU for Exchange 2016 that we just released last week. There are a couple important changes you want to be aware of. One is that we finally did increase the force functional level that's required for running it. You now have to run Windows 2008 R2, which means all your directory servers have to be running at least that. Hopefully your directory servers are running something even more advanced than that. But this is now a hard-coded requirement into Exchange setup, and setup will in fact block if you do not have FFL set to 2008 R2. We have not changed any support for 2013 and earlier versions. We may do that at a later date, but we'll forecast that in advance for you so you've got time to prepare for that. But this is a significant change for the Exchange 2016 code base. This CU, we also decided to skip .NET 4.7. That is not a statement or reflection of any instability or any problems with it. We just skipped it to realign with where we're shipping and to give customers the ability to catch up and sync with our ship cycle. So no .NET changes coming in this update, but there will be some coming in future updates. We will support 4.7.1, for example, in the December 2017 updates, so the next CU for Exchange. And then we'll require that starting next June. We're going to require you to have 4.7.1 or later on your boxes as well. And the .NET framework support that is listed here actually does apply to both 2016 and 2013 as well. So if you are running 2013, that applies to you too. All right, I mentioned there's a couple issues in CU7. They are somewhat minor. Probably the bigger one is the online archive folders. If you have a hybrid configuration and you create online archive folders in Office 365, the archive folders are not appearing in CU7 for Outlook on the web, or what we used to call Outlook Web App, OA. That is something where we'll have a fix in the next CU, but we just recommend for now as a workaround, just use Outlook to get around it. The other one is we've got information protected emails, and I'm going to demo some new functionality that we have on that later on. But when we add hyperlinks to them, we're not translating those hyperlinks into the same language that the rest of the message is being translated to. So that's another noteworthy fix that we're working on there as well. The complete list of fixes is documented in this KB, so I would go over that list and make sure that everything in there is to your liking before you apply it. And of course, test the CUs if you can before you put them into production. Now, in the scheme of things, contrary to what the original blog post said, there are actually schema changes that we made in CU7. The original blog post for the announcement said that there were none, and both statements are actually true. There are schema changes in the build, but nothing that is going to do anything for on-premises. The schema changes that we made are for an HTTP-related feature in the cloud, and so that code will never be executed on-prem, but it's the same code base, it's the same single package, so schema updates we get in the cloud mean schema updates for on-premises as well. And we are updating the blog post to reflect that if it hasn't been already. And for those of you interested, you can go to this one article and you can track all the schema changes that we've made. I know the article is a little out of date right now, so we're doing some work to bring it up to date to 2016 CU7. But there's also other versions that you can click on that to see all the schema changes for earlier versions of Exchange as well. Okay, so let's talk about the life cycle of the next version of Exchange. How many of you heard the announcement yesterday? Not as many hands as I thought. So sorry about that. You should have heard our announcement yesterday that we are currently planning and in the process of building the next on-premises version of Exchange Server, Exchange Server 2019. What do you guys think about that? All right. We think that's pretty cool, too. And there's some information you're going to want to know. So now, for those of you who saw the announcements, you know that, and as I said earlier, all our greatest innovation is coming into the cloud, but there is a lot of cloud stuff that can inure directly to the on-premises product. So when you think about the areas of security, manageability, usability from the end user, information worker perspective, and compliance, there's still a lot of cool stuff we can grab from the cloud and put into this next on-premises version of Exchange. We will have a preview version that is spinning up next May. I would encourage all of you to sign up for it because it's going to be awesome. And we do plan to release this in the second half of 2018, and no, I do not have an exact date for you. But we will have more information later on as it becomes available. But for this show at Ignite, we're just talking about the fact that, yeah, 2019 is coming. All right. So, who would like to talk about some tips and tricks? Maybe Robert Gillies? Sorry, Robert, we did not plan that. I'm just messing with him. Okay, so let's start with Windows 2016. How many of you are running Exchange 2016 on Windows 2016? Anybody doing that yet? Okay, not as many as I'd hope, but I understand that because I know we had some issues on it. We still have some issues on it that we're working on. One of the biggest issues that we had was you install Exchange 2016 on a clean Windows 2016 OS, you create a DAG, and next thing you know, IIS crashes and starts rebooting the box over and over again. Well, we fixed that issue, and so that was really the main blocker to moving forward with Windows 2016. So once we fix that issue, now folks can start getting forward. And because we fixed that issue, there is a KB update that is needed on the box before it will be supported, and setup will look for that as well. So once you run setup, it'll see whether or not you have that, and if you do, it will proceed. If you don't, it will error out and hard block you from going forward. Now, recently you may have heard of incompatibility with iOS 11 and Exchange, and Exchange in particular on Windows 2016. There was a bug that we've been tracking that does affect the native ActiveSync app, which would be the mail app, in iPad, iPhone, and other ActiveSync clients. That bug, we are working with Apple to fix it. That's a bug that Apple has to fix, but it does affect our customers, so we're working with them to fix it. So right now on premises, we would recommend that you would disable HTTP 2. Okay, that would be your workaround until Apple provides a fix. Or better yet, you could always ditch the native mail app and go for Outlook on those devices, which will give you a much better experience anyway. Now, for those of you wondering, well, how are we affected in the service by it? Well, we actually were almost not affected at all. And the reason for that is we went around and we disabled HTTP 2 on all of our Exchange Online and Outlook.com servers so that when this problem hit, when iOS 11 got released and people had access to it, the impact in our environment was almost zero because of that. Now, in your environment, all you have to do is do the same. I've got the instructions in the notes section on how to do that. Be aware it does require a restart of the server, but that shouldn't be a problem because hopefully all of you are running DAGs, so you can just switch over the load, restart the server, switch the load back, and you're good to go. But we are tracking that issue, and we will provide updates on the blog and in the Service Health dashboard and other places, Twitter and so forth, to let you know that we're good to go. Oh, and anecdotally, just before I move on to this one, for those of you running Exchange 2010 on Windows 2008, the minimum default cipher suite that you get in that combination does not have any ciphers that can work with iOS 11. So that platform is affected as well. So in that case, you would have to go and enable additional ciphers in that environment in order to get iOS functionality, ActiveSync functionality working on iOS again. And speaking of ActiveSync, it's always important to point out, especially when an issue like this comes up, that all we do is license the protocol. So the actual implementation of ActiveSync, for instance, on an iPhone or an Apple device, or really any third-party device, all that code is written by them. We license them the protocol that tells them how to talk via ActiveSync, but the actual implementation is all on them. We have nothing to do with it. So that's one of the reasons why when we encounter a bug like this, we can't do anything about it other than maybe a mitigation in the service, like what we did with disabling HTTP 2. That fix has to come from Apple. They own the code on that device. We only license the use of our protocol technology. So I want everybody to understand that our hands are tied here. We can't break into Apple's source code and fix the problem for you. We're working with them to fix it, but it's their code that needs to be fixed. We also do track, as well as we can, a list of all third-party ActiveSync enabled devices and all the known issues. And by known, I mean known to Microsoft. So any issue that we know, we will put in this one article. So if you get a new device, or if you're suddenly experiencing problems with a device against Exchange, it might not be a bad idea to go to this list and maybe check it out and see if it's a known issue or not. And then if it's not, then you might maybe open a support call, and we can work with you, but chances are we're going to bring the third-party vendor in to actually produce the fix for you. All right, let's talk about calendar sharing. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this because there's a whole cool session this week, but I did want you to be aware of some cool new features that we have. Now, I know a lot of you are just on-premises only, and I understand that. This particular tip is for Exchange Online only, so it's calendar sharing in Exchange Online. We've made some pretty significant improvements, including a major release last week where we updated a whole host of functionality that made sharing your calendars with other people so much smoother and easier in Office 365. And what we've done is we've worked very hard to make the experience the same on all Outlook platforms. So Outlook desktop on Windows, Outlook mobile, and so forth, Outlook on the web, and so forth. So we've tried to get parity between those so that you can view a shared calendar, share your calendar on any device, and basically have the same experience no matter what form factor that you're using. Now, I mentioned the major release. One of the major releases is that we now have delegated permissions for shared calendars. This was a big ask for customers who share their calendars quite frequently. And there are a lot, you think of the executive scenarios where they've got delegates and they're using multiple calendars and whatnot. This is a perfect example of playing into that scenario and improving the experience. The other thing that you can do is now you can accept calendar sharing invitations natively within the apps themselves. You just have an accept button to push, you push the button, and everything happens seamlessly. And again, I don't want to steal thunder from the presenters because there's another session that's all devoted to this, but I do want to point out that the experience on calendar sharing right now is going through a little bit of a transition. So if you share your calendar with people today, you're going to get the new experience. If you have existing shared calendars, you have to go through an upgrade process. But that upgrade process is literally as simple as resharing the calendar with them. And then when they click accept to accept that, everything gets automatically upgraded to the new experience, and there's nothing else that you or the administrator or the person doing the sharing has to do at that point. It all just happens automatically. And again, this acceptance can happen through the web client, through the Outlook mobile app, or through Outlook on the desktop as well. And again, please go see a couple sessions where we're going to talk about it, particularly the second one where the PM responsible for these features is going to go through them in great detail. And we'll talk about the Mega Ask the Experts in a little bit. All right, so let's keep going on. So now, this is an interesting one. How many of you use automatic replies for mailboxes? Yeah. A lot, almost all of you, yeah. So automatic replies have this sort of quirk related to them, and it's a quirk that we caused ourselves. We did this ourselves. The challenge is when you're configuring these automatic replies through PowerShell, a couple of the parameters you need to use. One is start time and one is end time. But those can be a little tricky. Set mailbox auto reply configuration, which is what you use to set the auto reply, will use the server on the Exchange server, or will use the time zone rather on the Exchange server itself. So for all on-premises servers and for all Exchange Online servers, the time zone is set to GMT. Okay, but unfortunately, PowerShell, when you run get mailbox auto reply configuration and you're just looking at the configuration, it converts that to the time zone on your machine, wherever you're running PowerShell from. Okay, so that means there could be a little bit of an offset there. You actually have to calculate the offset between your current time zone and GMT. So right now we're in EDT. There's a 4-hour offset. So if I wanted to start and stop time of 6 p.m., I wouldn't put in 1800, which is what 6 p.m. EDT is. I'd have to put in 2200 GMT, which is 6 p.m. EDT. So it can be a little tricky and a little confusing to remember this. So it's always good to check. After you run set, run the get and make sure that the times are coming back the way you would expect them to. If they're not, you didn't do the calculation and you're going to go and have to go back and reset that. All right, this is a common question that comes up. How do we calculate message latency in the tracking logs? Well, it's actually a collection of calculations in the message tracking logs. Every single component that is involved in any way with message delivery logs information about how long that component took within the message tracking logs. And if you look at the tracking output, that's going to give you each component name. Now, unfortunately, the component names are super cryptic. Some of them you might be able to figure out. I mean, AD, Active Directory, right? Okay. Calendar, yeah. But there's others that you won't be able to figure out, and there's literally hundreds of them, hundreds of components, small components that are involved, little agents that do tiny things on messages and whatnot. Fortunately for you, there is one place you can find a complete listing of all the components that can list themselves in the message tracking log, and that just so happens to be the notes section of this particular slide. So you're going to want to download this slide because, again, this is the only place you will find this information. How do I know? Because I'm the only one who's compiled it so far. And now it's all yours. All right. One more thing about running on Exchange 2016, and this is really related to antivirus software. How many of you are running antivirus software on your Exchange servers themselves? Okay, I would hope that every hand went up, but they didn't. So I would encourage you to do that. It is part of our security best practice recommendations. But the most important thing to know is that it's got to be configured properly. You have to exclude things like Exchange databases, Exchange log files, checkpoint files, and so forth. The last thing you would want is some sort of app on your box locking one of those critical files that needs to stay locked by Exchange and not an antivirus system. Now, in Windows 2016, it comes with Windows Defender. And Windows Defender has the full antivirus capabilities that we previously had in System Center Endpoint Protection. So when you're on Windows 2016 and you're running Exchange 2016, you now already have full antivirus protection, and you don't have to go and get a third-party product to do that unless you wanted to add another one on it. And in terms of configuring the exclusions, I've given you a snippet of a script that we use in our actual labs at Microsoft. When we're deploying Exchange, we deploy on a clean operating systems, and we use PowerShell scripts to deploy them. And if you add these lines to your script, and you'll want to add them after Exchange is on the box because that's when those paths will appear. If you do that, that will programmatically set up all the exclusions that you need in Windows Defender, so you don't have to go in and manually do the exclusions. If you're interested in what those exclusions are, you can go to that article. It lists them all in a large table. You may see like 80 or so rows, but keep in mind almost everything listed in the table all uses the same path. So there's really just 7 paths that you have to exclude. You don't have to go through every single thing in the table because excluding, for example, if you look at the first line, that's going to catch everything in that path, which covers like 30 things in the table already. But keep this in mind, you don't have to programmatically do it, but if you are, like us, deploying Exchange servers using scripts, this is going to cut down on a few manual steps for you. All right, let's talk about managed availability, and in particular the health mailbox, or what we call the monitoring mailboxes. If you're not familiar with this, we introduced this in Exchange 2013. Managed availability is the evolution of our high availability platform that gives Exchange the ability to detect a problem, understand that problem, and then take corrective action based on what the problem is. And one of the ways in which it does that is it's constantly sending information to itself. And how does it do that? Well, it has its own mailbox. Okay, we've got health mailboxes for every single database on every single server that you have and that we have in Exchange Online. And these health mailboxes are largely designed to be self-managing. There's nothing that you need to do. You don't need to create them. You don't need to delete them. You don't need to set policies on them. You don't need to go in the mailbox and clean it out. You really don't even need to look at them directly. Okay, so don't do any of these things that we have. Don't do things like third-party customized password policies. That's going to cause problems because part of the management capabilities that we built into managed availability is its own ability to periodically change its own password. And we want that. We want it to have password freshness, just like we would want any user with a mailbox, but the admin doesn't have to get involved in that. The system will automatically do it itself, and it can only do that if you just leave it to do its thing. So don't exclude them from lockout policies. Don't move them from the mailbox monitoring, the monitoring mailboxes container in Active Directory. If you're looking in Active Directory, you see that container, that's where those health mailboxes belong. Do not move them out of there. Don't change any of the account properties. Don't put any password restrictions on them. Don't mess with Active Directory permission inheritance. If you do any of these things, you have the potential to break the health mailboxes, and if that happens, you've basically broken managed availability functionality for the database serviced by that mailbox. A couple other things is we don't want you to move them between databases. Each database, when you instantiate it, will create its own health mailbox. And every time the HM worker service starts up for that database, it's going to look and see if it can connect to the health mailbox it expects. If it can't, say for example, it can't find the mailbox, it will automatically recreate that mailbox for itself to do its thing. You don't have to do anything about that. Also, don't apply mailbox quotas, and if you are applying a retention policy, which we know some customers do because they've got regulatory requirements to apply retention policies across the board, they'll just do a blanket policy across all their mailboxes. You can do that, but you want to keep the data in there for a minimum of 30 days because, again, the Health Manager service uses some of that data, some of that telemetry to figure out problems and latency and other calculations it does, and we want to make sure it always has at least 30 days worth of email in there for it to be able to do that. All right, now, how many of you are either in the process or about to move mailboxes from on-prem to the cloud? All right, lots and lots of folks. There are, shall we say, a few reasons that mailbox migrations might not go as smoothly as you'd expect. There's actually a lot of reasons, and I wanted to find all the reasons where we might stall one, where we might push back in the service and slow things down for you, and try to give you a comprehensive list of the error codes you might encounter if there's anything that causes your mailbox move to slow down or get pushed back. So here is a complete list right now. We're going to talk about one of those in particular because it's sort of interesting, I think. But other than the one we're going to talk about, we have not yet documented any of these things, so I want to let you know that we're also going to undertake a project to document each one of these reasons so that if you do run into a problem, you can just click on that error code and it will tell you exactly what the problem is and how to resolve it. We don't have that now, but at least we have a complete list of the errors you can encounter during the moves. Now, the one in particular that I thought was somewhat interesting is this stall due to target MDB full. So the target obviously being the mailbox database to which you are migrating your mailboxes. Now, you don't get to choose that, obviously. We don't let you pick your databases in Exchange Online. You go where the service sends you based on literally what's going on in the service right now. We use a lot of heat maps and a lot of activity analysis to find the best place to put mailboxes that are being onboarded. And in fact, we'll also continuously move mailboxes around to sort of smooth out the hot spaces, if you will, in a heat map, or to smooth out the peaks and shore up the valleys from a resource standpoint. So we use an algorithm inside to look at all the available databases and figure out which ones we think are best from you. And among other data points, one of the ones that we use is how much free space is in the database and how much data are you about to put into it. Now, sometimes customers have started their move, and again, you can't pick the database, we pick it for you, and then they encounter this stall message. What does that mean? Well, what that basically means, what that basically means is that we did pick a good database for you, but somehow during your move, as data was coming in, the situation with that database changed. Maybe more data came in than was expected, maybe other things were happening in the database, so it ran out of space a little bit, in which case we would stall with this error message and then push back and redirect you to something else. So what do you do when you encounter this? Well, one thing you can do is just do nothing. If you're not in a super urgent hurry, literally do nothing, just wait. The service itself knows that you're in a stalled state. It will find another database for you and begin the move again. So that's one option. Another option is you could lower the amount of time between the initial sync and when the finalization is done. Or you could also delete and recreate the move if you're in a super urgent hurry and you just got to get the mail up there right away. That would be the fastest way to do it. However, of course, that does not guarantee you won't run into some other move issue as well. Now, I don't want to leave you with the impression that moves are going to cause you problems, because we've moved hundreds of millions of mailboxes into Exchange Online with minimal or no problems. But occasionally you may run into one of these things, and now you know what to do if you see this particular one. And again, we are going to work on documenting all of them so that if you do run into any of them, you'll know exactly what action items you need to take to get yourself to a good spot. All right, so let me introduce you to PAW. How many of you have heard of PAW? Really? Well, I know you have. Okay, so for those of you who've heard of it, that's awesome, but I'm guessing most of you have not. So PAW is Protocol Agnostic Workflow. It is the migration code, the new migration code. I don't want to say modern, but it's the new migration code that we're using, and it dramatically improves the migration experience. I'll show you some differences in a bit, but this is something where some customers have recently noticed. They'll get this warning message right here. One of the migration features, PAW, isn't enabled. And if it's not enabled by December 1st of this year, you won't be able to do any migrations. That's not a big deal. It's nothing that you need to enable yourself. It's something that we're doing on the back end. And let me show you how you can figure out if your tenant is set up for that. So if you run get migration config, you'll see a couple things in the features section. For many of you, or for almost all of you, you're going to see multi-batch listed, multi-batch being the name of the existing migration code that we use, the older code that we would like to deprecate and stop maintaining, in favor of PAW, which you see here, which is the new modern code that we have that I'll show you a table which will compare the functionality. But the first thing you want to do is check your tenant and see if PAW is enabled. If PAW is not enabled, then there's a couple things that you can do. One could be because maybe you've got some existing migration batches. It could be public folders or mailbox, and so you would run get migration batch to check that. And if you do see some migration batches returned with that commandlet, you want to check the state, because any that are in a completed state, you want to just go ahead and remove them, and anything not in a completed state, you want to move to completed and then remove those as well. Once you've completed and removed any legacy migration batches, that's when PAW will automatically be enabled for your tenant, and that's when your tenant will start benefiting from the use of the new migration code. Now, we know there's a couple older legacy tenants out here, probably will not affect anybody in the room, but there's a couple that may not be able to switch to that. And if you actually run into that, feel free to reach out to me directly, because I would love to help you resolve that and get you on the new code. I don't think anyone in this room is going to encounter that, but just in case. So what are some of the benefits? So for those of you who've done migrations, I think you're going to find these to be a really, really beneficial changes. In addition to the code improvements themselves, which increase stability, increase speed and performance and throughput and whatnot, but there's also benefits for the admin. So for example, in the old system, you could only stop and start migrations at certain times throughout them. Now with PAW, you can stop and start them at any time. With the completion options, we only allowed either automatic complete when it was done, or manual complete when the administrator would go ahead and mark it complete. Now we've got scheduled completion, so you can automatically have that handled as well. For users, you can now remove individual users from a batch. You don't have to delete the entire batch anymore, which is important for those of you who are doing bulk moves. That's a really big one. And then throttling in the old system was handled by the old system code. Throttling in the new system is handled by the MRS code. And what we're finding now in the new system is actually allowing us to reach the throttling levels. And that's a good thing. It might not sound good to you, but let me explain. Ideally, we want to run the service at as maximum capacity as we possibly can. Okay, we want to use all the hardware resources we can without overloading the box and compromising the experience. So that could be 70, 80, maybe even 85 or more % resource utilization. So if we're not reaching the throttling limits, that's telling us we're not using all the resources available in the box, because throttling's not going to kick in until there's some sort of resource constraint. So now the fact that the new code is able to reach the throttling limits means that we are now using more resources. We're getting more work done, again, without compromising the box or the user experience on that box, but at the same time, we're increasing your throughput for these migrations now to the maximum throughput that we can give you at this time. So that's a very significant improvement. And then the other big thing is, before you got your initial sync report, and then you had to wait till the very end, and you would get your completion report. Now we give you the ability to have periodic status reports as well, so you're not just staring into the abyss waiting for the completion report. All right, OAuth. OAuth. We talked about OAuth last year, and we talked about it because at that time it was a critical call generator, because customers did not know that the OAuth self-signed certificate that Exchange put on the box was not supposed to be deleted. So they would delete that, and that would immediately break authentication scenarios, and then they would call us, and we would tell them how to fix it. And so that was the common call generator we went through last year. And this certificate is important. If it's not there, if it's not the right one and it's in place, all sorts of chaos will ensue on your Exchange server. Things like the host service host won't start, and there's other dependencies on that as well. So many services on the Exchange server itself won't start. Now, OAuth also comes into play when you run the hybrid config wizard. Okay, so if you run the hybrid config wizard and this OAuth certificate is gone, you're going to get this error message that's going to tell you that it's gone, and it's going to refer to the certificate itself right away. If you run into this problem, despite how bad it might look, it is so super easy to fix. If your certificate is present, you'll see this output. If it's missing, you'll see that output. Either way, you're using get exchange certificate. So if it's missing and you get the error message, how do you fix it? Well, like I said, super simple. You just run 2 commandlets. One is to create the new Exchange certificate, and then the second is to allow it to be used for authentication. Once you do those 2 things, you've now reconfigured and put the OAuth certificate back where it needs to be in the right form, and everything should keep working. Now, there is this additional scenario, though, where some customers, particularly those in a highly regulated environment, they have policies that prevent them from using self-signed certificates. So they want to replace the self-signed OAuth certificate with one from some trusted certification authority. That is supported. The only reason the OAuth cert we use is self-signed is because that's the only one setup can create. That's literally the only reason we use it. The fact that it's self-signed is really irrelevant in terms of your usage of that certificate. So if you're in a regulated environment and you can't use self-signed certificates, you absolutely can use trusted CA and a third party or your own PKI to put a non-self-signed certificate on there. Obviously, test things out before you roll into production, but it is a fairly simple thing to replace that certificate as well. And once that's done, then you no longer have the self-signed certificate to deal with. Keep in mind, though, that one of the benefits of the self-signed certificate is it automatically maintains itself. If you swap that out and go to one that you want to use, you get to maintain that. So that could be extra administrative burden. You're going to want to make sure that you're not on vacation when that expires, because everything will break. All right. Let's talk about the support assistance. How many of you have used one of these wizards that we have? And there's like 30 of them in there. And not just for Exchange, too. We've got some SharePoint stuff in there. All right, a few of you. If you go to configure.office.com, that'll show you this page, and you can see the whole list, things like the unified compliance, that's verifying a hybrid config, troubleshooting Outlook connectivity for the diagnostic, or troubleshooting connectivity for Outlook on the web is another one. The Office 365 health and readiness checks is an important one. You don't want to start moving to Office 365 until you've done that. Troubleshooting mail flow, and the hybrid key distribution as well. So you can run all these wizards to get all this stuff happening in your environment automatically. Now, the hybrid license key comes up quite a bit. When you request a key, we do this evaluation of your tenant. And if your tenant is an enterprise version of Office 365, you qualify for the free license key and the wizard will give you one. If your tenant is not an enterprise version, or if it's enterprise but it's a free trial, then the wizard will not give you a key. And if you run through the wizard and you don't meet the eligibility, you will get this error message here that says, we're sorry. The wizard says that you don't meet the requirements. Sounds pretty simple. Now, unfortunately, some customers who do qualify for the key are still receiving this error message, and they should not be. And that's something that we've looked into, and I believe that we've fixed now. But if you do see this error message, let us know right away. If you believe that you meet the requirements for getting the hybrid key and you're still running into this error message, that's something we want to know about right away. You can escalate that through support, or like I said, feel free to ping me directly and I can connect you with the right people. There is a diagnostic you can run if other things related to hybrid are not working in your environment as well. So the diagnostic has the benefits of giving you automated troubleshooting, and it will automatically collect data and store it on the server where you're running it, and then it will automatically parse all that data for you to tell you whether or not you're experiencing an issue that we know about. If we are experiencing an issue that we know about, we'll give you a link to the article. You can go right to that article, look up the information, fix the problem, and move on. If it's an issue we don't know about, however, again, you may be looking at a support call or getting some assistance from us. The one caveat, though, is right now this diagnostic is only supported in Internet Explorer, so you'll still want to keep that around, even though I know many of us have moved on to Edge or other browsers. This one is still only supported in IE. And actually, I didn't have the URL on the page, but it is in the slide, aka.ms/hcwcheck. And you can see this, the Diag Wizard is using the Office 365 Support Assistance Framework. So, and this is true, it'll work worldwide, Germany, China, dedicated, all of our Office 365 environments. And so if you've used any of the support wizards, you're going to find this experience very familiar to you because they all use the same framework. All right. Now, another common question that comes up is how and when can I decommission my on-premises servers once I've moved to the cloud? We do have some documentation for you, but it can be a little tricky to follow because it's spread across into multiple topics right now. So I want to sort of distill it into something that you can easily remember. So there's really three scenarios where on-premises Exchange can finally go away. One is if you do a cutover migration and later on you have no need for DirSync. Another is a stage migration, and again, DirSync is turned off. Or the hybrid migration, where the hybrid configuration has been removed, and again, DirSync has been turned off. So if DirSync is not needed in your scenario, you can start going through the decommission process and start getting rid of your on-premises 2016 servers, or 2013, or 2010, or whatever you're running. So I'm not going to walk through each step, but I have included all the steps for you in one place, so you don't have to jump to a bunch of places. But a lot of it is, looking at public folders, rerouting where your DNX and your auto-discover records are sent to, changing the auto-discover internal internal URI settings, and then deleting the connectors that were created by the wizard. Then you can remove the org relationship created by the wizard. You can disable the configuration for both on-prem and Office 365 for OAuth, running those two commandlets there. You'll run one to disable it on the servers. You'll run the second one to disable it in the cloud. And then the last couple steps is turn off DirSync and then run through Exchange's uninstall process. Don't just power off the server, don't just delete stuff. You actually do need to go into Exchange Setup. Probably the easiest way is just to go into Control Panel, Add Remove Programs, find Exchange in there, click Change. When the setup box comes up, do uninstall. The wizard should go through everything, do an orderly uninstall of Exchange from that server, remove stuff from your Active Directory, including the Meso container if it's your last Exchange server. And then at that point, you have decommissioned everything and you are now cloud only. All right, how many of you are using PSTs in your environment? A few of you. How many of you just love using PSTs and you're never, ever, ever going to give them up? 2 of you, okay, good. Good. Well, we have a new tool. We've got a new PST collection tool, and this can go and search your organization's network, find PST files, and allow you to do things like stop users from creating them or stop users from changing existing ones. And these are what we call block capabilities, and allows you basically to preserve the PSTs without having them altered in any way if you don't have the ability to pull them in. So I've got some diagrams that show you the process here. The first step basically is running the tool itself. You'll run it in find mode, and it'll search your network and find the PST files. It will also create a GPO. It'll be called PST usage controls, and that'll be linked to your domain, and that will apply to all authenticated users in your organization. The next step is to optionally block. The next step after that would be to copy the PST files that have been discovered. And the next step after that would be to run the tool in delete mode to delete the PST files if you don't need them anymore, and then do your migration over to the cloud if you want to. One thing to keep in mind, though, when you are performing PST exports, what we found is for mailboxes that are on lit hold, the exports are actually far larger than the actual size of the mailbox. So if you export a mailbox that's a gigabyte, you might end up actually with an export that's like 10 gigabytes or thereabouts. That is something that we fixed. It's not in CU7, it's coming in a later build, so you'll see that in the December updates. But keep in mind that is a known issue that you'll just have to deal with for mailboxes that are on lit hold. All right. Hopefully all of you are also aware that we're making a significant change in the service to deprecate and ultimately remove the old legacy RPC over HTTP protocol. We're removing it in favor of MAPI over HTTP, which is the modern protocol we introduced a while ago to replace RPC over HTTP. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but it's been a couple years now, and we are now ready to move forward and get rid of RPC over HTTP. But how do you figure out if you're going to be affected by it? Well, one of the cool new things that we have is if you go into the admin center, you can see under reports, we have these reports for usage. So you can see usage there. If I go and I look at the reports, I can see email usage for everybody in my organization. And right now we're looking at the 30 days of usage, but I can also see 90 days, and I can see 180 days worth of usage. And if I go and I use that export functionality there, that's going to export for me a list of all the users in this list, along with things like client information. And the client information will also help you determine what protocol that they're using to connect to your system. So you can find out just by doing this export whether or not your users are still using RPC over HTTP, and if they are, you're going to need to go and make a configuration change so that they're using MAPI over HTTP instead. After October 1st, it's coming up next week, we are not going to have RPC over HTTP running anymore. Now, in all honesty, it's not like a switch we're going to go flip and break it all, but that is really our cutoff point where we're going to start down the path of flipping those switches and cutting it off. So you will want to make sure that you're migrated to MAPI over HTTP as soon as you possibly can. That is super important. What's happening here? Oh no, I cannot believe this is happening in my session. What? Oh dear. Well, Ninja Cat would like to interrupt this session to give away some cool stuff. Now, okay, so here's what's going to happen. In this room, I don't want to give too much information because I don't want to cause a stampede. But in this room, on some chairs, on 4 chairs in fact, is a little piece of white tape. It's on the back of the chair. Now, look at your own chairs, or even better, look at the chair in front of you. It's going to be a little white piece of tape. If you have the little white piece of tape, you'll notice it. You don't have to look that hard. It'll stick out. If you have that piece of tape on the back of your chair, then you and the person directly behind you looking at that piece of tape can both come up and get a Ninja Cat t-shirt. So, where are my tape folks? Raise your hands. Yep, you and you. Bring the guy behind you. Okay, there should only be 8 in total, so I know we don't have any back there. I put the tape out myself. It's over there. It's over there, 1 and 1. All right, 1, 2, wait, that's too many people. Did somebody bring their own tape? Okay, well, I know we had those 2. I think we had those 2. I know we had those 2. And, oh, you actually brought the tape with you. Okay, all right. Oh, you brought it too. Okay, so 2, 2. Okay, so if you have tape, there's 2. Wait, let me see that. Yep, that's it. Yep, bring that. Okay, so if you have tape, step over here. If you don't have your tape, maybe run back and grab it. You guys have your tape? Go grab your tape. Okay, so I'm not going to worry on sizing or anything. You guys get to figure this out for yourself. There are large and extra large. There is Ninja Cat on a dragon, Ninja Cat on a tiger, Ninja Cat on a narwhal with 2 strips of bacon in its horn. Okay, you can't beat that. You can't beat that. Okay, so there are larges and extra larges. I'm going to let the 8 people come up. Wait, this is way too many people. Okay, people with tape in your hands and a buddy. Let's do this 2 at a time. So you 2, but let's do it quickly. I didn't think it would take this much time. Okay, you guys, grab your first 2. Who's got the next tape? Okay, you guys. 1 each, please. Yes, yeah, and then you can, yeah, then just get out. 1 there. Okay, wait. Okay, let me see that. That does not look like my gaffer tape, sir. Sorry, that's not the right tape. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That is not the right tape. Let's see. That is the right tape, sir. You might want to show him what it looks like. What do you got there? That is the right tape, sir. What? No, that's not the right tape. No, that's not the right tape. No, it's not. No numbers. There's no numbers. It's just, I didn't know there was other tape. Okay, so what? Oh no, is that the right tape too? That can't be. That can't be. Okay, well, fear not. I've got something for you guys too. Hang on, hold on. That's right. Xbox One. No. No. I know it's not a t-shirt, but they are Ninja Cat stickers. I know, I'm sorry. Just pretend you're 7. There you go. Oh, you've got, how many kids do you have? 2 kids? Well, sorry, there you go. 2 kids? You got kids? All right. There you go. All right. Still have a few left for other sessions and other stuff in other sessions too, but that was more people than I thought, so. All right. Thank you, Ninja Cat. All right. Back to our slideshow already in progress. I'm not going to talk too much about this next thing. I really just want to give you a heads up that it's coming. We're introducing a feature inside of Exchange and SharePoint called service encryption. Right now on all of our Office 365 servers, we use BitLocker, so we've got volume level encryption, but there's a couple limitations with BitLocker that we want to overcome. One is that BitLocker itself is tied to the Windows administrator, and so anybody in the service that has local admin permissions has access to the BitLocker configuration and the ability to turn it off, which we would not want. But secondly, though, some customers have a regulatory requirement such that if they terminate contract with us and they exit our service, they need a mechanism by which they can render all of the data that they may have left in the service commercially unrecoverable. They can do that with service encryption using a feature called service encryption with customer key. That's where the customer themselves manages the key. That could be managed in an on-prem HSM and uploaded into Azure Key Vault, or it could be something that they create in Azure Key Vault and manage that way. But either way, the customer has control and management of that key, so that if they do exit the service, they just revoke permissions for us to use that key, and now the service cannot decrypt anything, and all of their data is basically commercially unrecoverable from that point. So this is a very, very cool feature that we're introducing. Even if you don't use the customer key feature, we're still going to encrypt all mailboxes at the mailbox level throughout Exchange Online. If you don't use customer key, it just means we manage the key for you. That's the only difference. Again, I don't want to steal too much thunder. I would strongly recommend that you go see this session, Manage and Control Your Data, to help you meet compliance needs with customer key. This will talk about everything you need to know from an Exchange perspective, and also include information about what we're doing in SharePoint Online with this feature as well. So I would strongly recommend going to see this. All right, some high availability stuff. A lot of folks have expressed a great deal of interest in using Azure virtual machines for a witness server for their on-premises DAGs, because maybe they've only got 2 data centers and they want to use an Azure VM as their 3rd location so that they can get automatic failover for their databases. And that's fine. It is a totally supported configuration. It does, however, have a requirement of using multiple multi-site VPN connections. Okay? And a lot of customers have asked us, can I use ExpressRoute? No, you cannot. That is not a supported configuration. And the reason for that is simply to do with the routing requirements. There are failure scenarios that could end up routing traffic, say, for instance, from site B over here into Azure through site A. Okay, which we would never want. Kind of defeats the purpose of having separate paths to your witness server. So using ExpressRoute in this configuration is not supported, and again, even if you do it in an unsupported configuration, you'll run into failure scenarios where it won't work for you as well. So do not do that. Lag copies. Some customers have seen some of their lag database copies with a content index state set to auto-suspended. And some folks are seeing this on 2013, some may see this on 2016. We actually added new behavior in 2013 that is causing this. One of the things that we want to do is, I mentioned earlier about running all the resources we possibly can. We want to do that in on-prem as well, but we're focused on the user experience. And content index for a lag database really doesn't impact the user experience at all. So we have this code that says if there's X number of active databases, automatically auto-suspend the content indexing for passive databases or lag databases on that server. Now, X is set to 15 by default. There is a way that you can change that. It's a registry entry. I've got the notes in the slides for you. I don't recommend that you change it. But it is changeable if you want to. It is something that we'll support a change on. But keep in mind, this is new behavior that we had in there. It's the default behavior. If you end up in a situation where you've got 15 active databases on a server, you should expect content indexing to throttle back and auto-suspend itself for the passive databases and the lag databases. And as I said, the primary reason we introduced this was to save I/O on the box and network bandwidth at all. And so the suspension of this will cause all indexing I/O to stop. And you can automatically go in and resume it too. If you want to use suspend and resume, that'll automatically go ahead and get things running for you again. It's also important to point out that the code that actually does this change is not inside managed availability. This is actually something that the search service itself has been hard-coded to do. It'll just run the suspend. It'll actually use those 2 commandlets to do it, but it's not MA doing it. It's search doing this. And again, this can be controlled with a registry entry. If you set the value to 0, it will disable the feature. I don't recommend doing that, but if for whatever reason you find a business case that needs that, then you can go ahead and do that. But I would keep it with the default for now. If you're not even seeing this issue in your environment, you might just even ignore it altogether. But just keep in mind, if you do see auto-suspended, that is your hallmark that says search service automatically suspended this to save resources. All right. We do know of another issue with managed availability running on Windows 2016. We've got these reboot responders. So remember, managed availability can take automatic recovery. It can restart services. It can terminate processes. It can reboot servers as well. On Windows 2016, though, we're not using the same reboot trigger that we did previously. Previously, we would kill wininet.exe, and that would blue screen the box, and that's how we would bounce it. We actually stole that behavior from Cluster, which pioneered it. But wininet.exe doesn't do the same thing on Windows 2016. You can terminate it all you want. Keeps the box up and running. So what we try to do is we're trying to kill a particular instance of service host. But unfortunately, we didn't implement the code correctly, and so we're not successful at killing it. So the reboot responder on 2016 simply doesn't work. That's something that we're working on fixing. It should be fixed in the next update, but keep that in mind. There may be some additional monitoring that you need to do to account for this if you're on Windows 2016. Another common question is, can I run server recovery using newer media? So say, for example, customers running Exchange 2016 CU3, okay, and CU3 is now no longer available for download. The latest CU7 is now what's available for them. Can you run server recovery with the later version? Yes, absolutely you can. It's not going to change the admin display version. In my example, the admin display version would still say CU3, but you can use the CU7 bits to perform the recovery. The next time you do your next CU install, it will change the admin display version to reflect the newer bits. But if you run recovery with a newer version, the admin display version is not going to get updated as a result of that. But it is a supported and workable and recommended way to do recovery if you can't find the original version that you were on. Now, there are some limitations, though. You still can't use Recover Server to change the OS. You still can't use Recover Server from earlier versions of Exchange against a new version. What you can do, though, is use newer media for the version that you're running and use that to do the recovery. All right. We've introduced recently some new anti-phishing behavior for Office 365 as well. This is super important because, as you may have heard in the news this week, there have been at least one high-profile data breach that was the result of spear phishing, where what looked like a legitimate email came into someone in an organization, and they sent sensitive information out, and the bad guy got a hold of that, and as a result was able to infiltrate the environment and get data that they shouldn't have had. So we're doing a lot of stuff to prevent anti-phishing. So now when you get a message in Office 365 and we just can't verify the identity, even after using things like SPF or DKIM or some of the other things that we do, we will display a question mark in the sender photo. So historically, we would display the initials or maybe the first letters of the display name that was provided. So in the example you may have seen at the keynote where they were talking about getting a message from Satya that needed important message right away. You may have seen in the circle it said SN for Satya's initials. Well, here we're not doing that anymore. Now we're going to put a question mark in there. Customers can override the behavior if it turns out to be a trusted individual after all, but we are going to put the question mark here to give people visual identification that this message did not pass sender authentication. And then on top of that, we're also going to call out when we detect an attempted spoofing and spoofing that uses multiple forms of authentication. So the sender's actual address is different from what's in the from field, if you will. If we detect that, we will put sender name, but then we'll also put via and then the domain that authenticated. In this example, the sending domain is suspicious.com. That's just for this example. It's not going to say unknown user at viasuspicious.com. This is just for the example. It'll say the two domains. You'll see the domain that they put in the sender field, and you'll see the domain that was actually in the from address all in one so that you can figure out at a glance if this is a legitimate message or not. All right, some customers have asked about firewalls, particularly header firewalls. Header firewalls, if you don't know, as their name implies, they strip off headers from the Exchange header track. Some customers have the opinion that some information about their environment should never go outside their environment, and that includes things like the names of their Exchange servers. My personal feeling is I don't think that's a security vulnerability, but I'm not going to argue the point with those of you who do. So for those of you who are concerned about information in the headers going outside your organization, you could use header walls to strip some of that stuff off and clean it up. But you will break the header chain when you do this. So if you're doing any sort of journaling, advanced e-discovery, compliance work and stuff, you may end up removing some of the important transport chain events that we would need in there. So generally, we would not recommend that you use header firewalls, but they're there in case you do feel like you do have something sensitive that you need to protect, and you can do that. Just keep in mind the caveats that go along with using them. All right, one of the other things that we have in the Office 365 support troubleshooters is this spam and malware troubleshooter, and this will help figure out why email for your organization isn't being sorted correctly. So if messages are coming in and you're wondering why they're not getting caught, they're making its way into people's mailboxes, you would want to go and run this wizard, and this will not only do some checking as to your configuration, but this will also give you or allow you to give us feedback as to how we're performing from an anti-spam perspective as well. So if you do see a bunch of stuff, unwanted stuff coming in, run this troubleshooter, and that can give you at least a first place to check to resolve that. Some other things that people like to do from a compliance standpoint is what we call search and destroy, where you know you've got message X somewhere in people's mailboxes all throughout the system, and you want to find where that message is, and then you want to delete every instance of it. And as I just described, it is literally that two-step process. The step one is to run the compliance search, and that will find where the messages are, and literally step two is to delete it. So to run the compliance search, it's really simple. This example is showing you how to remove a phishing message. And if you know things like exact phrases or things that are verbatim in the subject line or somewhere that you can very succinctly zero in on it, we would recommend putting as much information in there as possible to really just identify those messages that you want to remove. So you start by creating the compliance search, and then the second step in there is you'll run the compliance search. And then once the compliance search is done, it'll give you a listing of all the messages that meet that search criteria. And then you could go in there and do a new compliance search action. And in this case, we're doing a purge. And the purge type will be a soft delete. So if anything needs to be recovered because it was accidentally destroyed, you can go in and get it out of there as well. That's the purpose of the soft delete purge. Now, for Exchange Online, it's largely the same process. You're going to create and run the compliance search, and then you're going to delete the message. So if we look at the commandlets that you're running here, there's a couple other things that you need to do. Whoops, that went past it. Oh, okay. There's a hidden slide not showing right now that has the same steps in it for 2016. But that's really all there is to it. In both on-prem and online, it is very simple to go in and find the bad messages and then nuke them out of the organization. All right, this one is actually about connecting to the Security and Compliance Center in Office 365 with SCC PowerShell. So you can connect right to this portal, and this will give you PowerShell connectivity and access to the commandlets that will allow you to manage these security and compliance settings from the command line. So you don't always have to go to the SCC itself, protection.office.com. I would recommend that you go there for other reasons, particularly the service assurance feature that's in there. But if you're just doing things like compliance settings and you just need to do something quick, or more importantly, if you need to do some bulk settings within SCC, PowerShell is going to be the much easier and faster way for you to do that. All right, let's talk about protecting confidential information with AIP. So again, for those of you running Exchange Online, we have made a considerable amount of investments that provide you with a more simpler and intuitive way to secure email, and it's all based upon Azure Information Protection. What I'm going to show you, I'm going to actually just run through the demo real quick to show you. So what I've got here is I'm in my Outlook client, And I need to send an encrypted message to 3 people who are external. One's an Office 365 recipient, one's a Hotmail recipient, one's a Gmail recipient. But all these 3 people are working with me on a large project, and the project is super confidential. So I want to make sure that none of this stuff leaks out. So what I can do is right at the top, you can see there's this bar for non-business, public, general, confidential, and so forth. I can choose confidential, and then I can choose any recipients only. And recipients means this will automatically be encrypted, sent to the recipients, and then the recipients will receive a message that gives them instructions on how to decrypt it and open up the message. So I classify this for recipients only. You can see it's changed the header a little bit. It's got the do not forward on there. So they can read the message, but they can't forward, print, or copy. And then when I click send, the message goes off. So this is what it looks like when the recipient receives it inside of Office 365. You can see it's been classified down here as Microsoft Confidential, but otherwise it is largely the same messaging experience that you would get with an unencrypted message, except that this one is encrypted, and you can see from the top it says, do not forward, recipients can't forward, print, or copy content. So for the other Office 365 recipient, this was a super seamless experience. There was nothing whatsoever they had to do. They can go in, they can reply all, but notice how forward is not lit up for them. So we're enforcing that within the message itself. Now here again, this is a reply that was received by one of the folks in another mail system. They're using iOS. We still have the same restrictions on board, but those restrictions are not always understood by every client, by every mail client. So we do have forward capability on here, but if they go through and they actually try to forward the message, we will kick it back with an NDR saying that, no, you can't forward this message because it's been protected by Office 365 and you don't have permission to do that. So even when it goes to a client where the client provides the forwardability, we stop that and transport and don't allow that confidential message to get shared. Now I'm in the Gmail experience, so this Gmail recipient gets this message. They have an option to read the message, so they click on that, and they can see the message in there as well. Now there's also another experience where they can also do a one-time passcode as well. And this is something simple. They can sign in with an MSA or get a one-time passcode. If I choose one-time passcode, they're going to send that passcode to the recipient's email message. I'll need to grab that passcode number and use it within 15 minutes or it will expire and I'll have to get another one. So I'll put the passcode in there, and once I do that and click continue, then the message opens up and I have all the same capabilities and the same restrictions that I had in the other platforms as well. See, I can reply all, but no forwarding here either. Now, if you have Office 365 E3 or E5 and you have not yet started using Office 365 message encryption or any rights management, then you can just turn on Azure Information Protection, run some PowerShell commandlets, and it'll be configured. If you have, however, already been using OME or rights management, Azure Rights Management, then you'll get migrated to the new experience, and there will be a migration path we'll take you down. Again, I don't want to steal thunder from the other speakers because we've got a couple sessions that are totally devoted to just this feature and this experience, and so I would strongly encourage you to go check those out. Next thing I want to talk about is Advanced Find in Desktop Outlook. On September 15th, we enabled some search deprecations that we had forecasted for you, and one of those things was turning off Advanced Find. So we deactivated it on September 15th, and immediately got feedback that, no, this was not a good idea. We needed to turn that back on. So we did actually listen to that feedback, take it to heart, and we did end up re-enabling the feature and turning it back on for you. So if it's gone missing for you, simply restart Outlook, and it should show back up for you after that. All right, last two things I want to tell you. They're real quick. One is that we've got a TAP program for public folders. We've increased our support for the number of public folders you can have. So if you're interested in moving your public folders from on-prem to the cloud, please reach out, and you can send an email message right here and hopefully join our TAP program. And then the last thing I want to say is for those of you who have business cards or just want to jot down your name and email address, we are also giving away a chance to win Office 365 for IT pros. If you drop your card off with me, I'll give it to the marketing manager who is running this giveaway. And if you are selected as one of the lucky winners, you'll also receive updates to the book at no cost as well. And then real quickly in the, I'm 13 seconds over, so just real quickly, I also do want to suggest strongly that you go to the Exchange and Outlook Mega Experts because, first of all, look at all those lovely faces, but second of all, there's a lot of knowledge that's going to be in that room, and it's also going to be a lot of fun as well. So hopefully you guys will make it there, and hopefully you'll make it to these other awesome sessions around Exchange as well. Okay, so with that, that's it for me. I've covered that up.